coming up on Sunday that will certainly have a lot of implications. It is an NFC showdown that will play a decisive role in determining the eventual champion of the East, the Eagles and Cowboys in Dallas. And yesterday, Philly coach Doug Pederson made some comments on the radio, sure to catch some ears in the Dallas locker room. Listen to what he said.
I know the sky's falling outside.
Yes.
It's falling, and I get that, and the fans are reeling just a little bit. But we're going down to Dallas, and our guys are going to be ready to play, and we're going to win that football game. And when we do, we're in first place in the NFC East. We control our own destiny. We're right where we need to be.
So it's fascinating that he would say that. And we had a lengthy conversation earlier here about Jason Garrett's overall job security and what might be at stake and whether the Cowboys will take umbrage to what we heard Doug Pederson say. But something else I wanted to bring up, and you mentioned this in our meeting this morning, Marcus, is just that these teams are both 3-3. They've both lost games they should have won. And yet look at the difference in the way the two coaches are thought of.
First of all, Philly is just removed off a Super Bowl in the context of what we think of recent history in the NFL. That's number one. Number two is there's a direction for this team. Doug Pederson hasn't been there as long as Jason Garrett. That's number three. And then number two, the other thing, they paid their quarterback. They're invested in their future. Now, everybody kills me when I say that the Cowboys' pause is on Dak with this contract because there's this idea that he can't lift them beyond the New York Jets on Sunday, right? When you talk about giving him that much money and putting him in that particular situation. So there are a lot of things that are transpiring in the Dallas Cowboy locker room ancillary to the fact that they're 3-3 opposed to the Eagles just fixing it and saying we'll get better.
Your usage of the word lift is perfect, right? Like I went home yesterday afternoon in the show and I said, dang, Sunday was Dak's moment. Like Sunday was his moment to go on the road, play without his left tackle, play without his number one receiver, play without his number two receiver, and lift his team and in many ways win a game that you had reasons you shouldn't win. That was going to be his moment, and he didn't do it. And that continues to be the conversation. I watched Russell Wilson do it on Sunday. In many ways, and again, we've talked about the officials, we watched Rodgers do it last night, right? Like Rodgers is playing without his top three receivers with Devontae, Allison, and Valdez-Scantling out for a little bit. Why can't Dak lift everyone around him when he needs to?
Well, let me rephrase the question then. I mean, the question is really about just how good he is. And when we talk about the cycle of mediocrity that Jerry Jones has to some degree bought into since Jimmy Johnson departed and holding on with Jason Garrett, an excellent way to remain mediocre is to pay a lot of money to a good player. And that's really what's at stake here with Dak.
That's what's at stake. And Greeny, it is the pause. I don't care what anybody says, man. You will never get me to think that you don't pay a guy you see as your franchise quarterback.
It was the moment where he could be worthy of overcoming everything else, right? Like,
and that's been the.
Yeah.
What have we been telling people?
Yeah.
That has been the pause. It's not that Dak doesn't have great moments and have ups and we see him do great things, but the consistency in that. You can't walk away from an 0-4 loss. And to mention that, yesterday, when you sat on this show and you said Sam Darnold was clearly the better quarterback.
In that game, he was.
And the reason why you say that is because Dak hasn't given us a consistent amount of moments for you to disband that argument.
Well, I have two thoughts. One, if you watch the game, I think it was just indisputable. Sunday, sure. And two, if you polled 32 general managers, or take 30 of them, take the Jets and Cowboys brass out of this, and said you can start a team right now with either Dak Prescott or Sam Darnold, what would this divide be?
25-5?
In favor of?
Oh, Sam Darnold. Yeah. Sam, again, I said this yesterday. Sam Darnold already did stuff in that game that Dak is incapable of doing.
And look, as we talk about Dak not lifting, Sam Darnold lifted.
See? I could make it about Darnold no matter what we do. Meanwhile, let's go to another young quarterback, and that would be the Cleveland Browns and Baker Mayfield, dropping to 2-4 with their latest loss. And as you know, Mayfield had another tough day. He threw 3 more interceptions. He now has a league worst 11 on the year. Listen to Browns coach Freddie Kitchens on the situation they're all in right now.
We found out if we were a team yet or not, and I think we've gotten that answer. But I do also think moving forward, we know the answer to that too. I think we're going to become a team. I think you don't find that out until you get kind of at the crossroads. And, I think it's time to make a decision.
I speak for all of America when I say, I'm sorry, what? I have no idea what he just said. We found out what we were. We're going to find out what we are. You always find that out at a court. What did he say?
Nothing. Not a damn thing, G.
What?
Listen,
What?
You know what they call that? They call that grasping for straws because it is turmoil going on. Listen, this is not a gloat situation. This can happen to any football team. Sure. My point is this. For everybody that was all in on the Cleveland Browns, if I didn't say it a million times, I didn't say it once. You cannot put a collection of young talent together because at some point during this season, there will be a call to siege. And the Cleveland Browns can't handle it. They don't have anybody on this roster to say, this is how we're going to get better. And we can point at Freddie Kitchens, we can point at Baker Mayfield, we can point at Odell, we can point at Jarvis Landry. All the synergy is great in the offseason. And everybody can talk about how great you want to be. Dan, you played in this league so long. I played in this league too long not to identify that these are young players that have never won and they got a young head coach that's trying to figure their way out. That's not a good recipe.
I think something that has to be thrown into this conversation is I think part of the panic, if you will, is being tamped down by the division. If Baltimore or Pittsburgh, if Pittsburgh hadn't gotten hurt, Ben didn't get hurt, if Baltimore was 5-1 right now and this division was hopelessly out of reach, the conversation would be awfully different around the Browns right now without them changing a thing.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I think the thing that is startling is when Freddie's making those comments, is he implying that they have not been a team up until this moment? Like, is there something there that we're not hearing about with some individuals or whatnot? Because when he's like, oh, we'll find out if we're a team, and we found out if we're a team, and we'll be a team moving forward, that's telling me that you think that at some point you were not that. We talked about, and I was actually in Freddie's corner, in Baker's corner before the season saying, I think that they're good enough leaders to get them through the difficult times. To your point, Marcus, saying, listen, this is a young football team, and I kind of had the Browns back. But seeing them play in the comments, I'm kind of being swayed to going, man, Marcus was right that this team is lacking a guy, lacking a leader.
Here's the thing, Dan. Here's the thing. And it's not about us being right or wrong. All I do is look at, first of all, y'all know me. I'm going to say what I'm thinking. This league is hard. Yeah. I tell people that all the time. Like, we looking at the Eagles and the Cowboys 3-3 right now. They could easily finish 13-3, or they could easily go the separate way. The margin is that small. But when you have this situation in Cleveland, that's hard to come back from.
It is. We'll have more football as we go. Meanwhile, let's go to the biggest story in sports this week. Al?
That's right. To the NBA, LeBron James says Daryl Morey was informed and not educated on the situation when he tweeted in support of anti-government protesters in Hong Kong. Morey's tweet, of course, ignited a firestorm of controversy that nearly led to the cancellations of the Lakers and Nets preseason games in China. The games were played, but none of the players spoke publicly about the controversy while they were in China. However, last night, before the Lakers preseason game with the Warriors, LeBron was asked specifically about how the NBA handled the situation.
I'm not here to judge how the league handled the situation. I just think that, when you're misinformed or you're not educated about something, and I'm just talking about, the tweet itself, you never know the ramifications that can happen. We all seen what that did. Not only did for our league, but for all of us in America, for people in China as well. And sometimes you have to think through things that you say that may cause harm not only for yourself but for the majority of people. And I think that's just a prime example of that. We all talk about this freedom of speech. Yes, we all do have freedom of speech, but at times there are ramifications for the negative that can happen when you're not thinking about others and you're only thinking about yourself. So I don't believe, I don't want to get into a word or sentence feud with Daryl. Morey, but I believe he wasn't educated on the situation at hand, and he spoke, and so many people could have been harmed, not only financially but physically, emotionally, spiritually. So just be careful what we tweet and we say and what we do. Even though yes, we do have freedom of speech, but there can be a lot of negative that comes with that too.
Apparently reading the room, LeBron then went on to clarify his comments on Twitter, saying, quote, "Let me clear up the confusion. I do not believe there was any consideration for the consequences and ramifications of the tweet. I'm not discussing the substance. Others can talk about that." He continued, "My team and this league just went through a difficult week. I think people need to understand what a tweet or statement can do to others, and I believe nobody stopped and considered what would happen. Could have waited a week to send it." Still ahead on Get Up, the Cowboys lost on Sunday, and, well, no one's happier than the biggest Cowboy troll of all, Stephen A. He will face off with Marcus Spears next.